Hola y bienvenidos a Sex in Spanglish, where we empower mujeres to get in touch with their bodies, own their pleasure, and where we discuss all the cochinadas our abuelas didn't tell us about. Hi all, my name is Ana. I'm a certified sex coach, proud Latina, and your go-to guide for all things sex. I'm here to help you break free from the cultural expectations that are holding you back from being the confident lover and mujer you've always dreamed of being. Let's be real. La comunidad latina doesn't talk about sex. Pero qué suerte tienes, because this Latina does, and I do it in Spanglish. It is my vision to have Latinas worldwide discussing sex with one another, just like we do with chisme. Join me every week to hear me discuss todas las cochinadas sin vergüenza. Bienvenida, mi gente. I am so excited to be back for my first full episode after my really long break. I don't even know how many months it was at this time. I think like maybe 3. So for those of you that stuck around, thank you for waiting. And for those of you that are new here, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. So let's just dive right in. So today I want to talk about what exactly a sex coach is. Because so far I've touched on, like the sex basics, as I call them. So anal and, orgasms and sex toys and things like that. But I really want to get into what a sex coach is and what exactly it is that I do, because I think there's still a lot of confusion still. So hopefully this clears this up. So first I want to talk about the difference between therapy and coaching. So a lot of people have asked me like if I'm a therapist or a counselor, and I'm not. So a counselor, has some type of certification, and I do have a certification. So I am a certified sex coach, but I am not a counselor. There's also licensed counselors and there's licensed therapists. I do not have a license, so I am not a therapist. I do have a social work and psychology background, but I haven't gone to get my license. And here's why. So therapy, the way that I see it, is more about diagnosing. So a therapist can diagnose you with, a mental illness. They also address, those problems and are more in the healing realm, right? So if you suffer from anxiety or depression or some other type of mental illness, maybe some trauma, they're able to guide you and aid you in that way. That is not my cup of tea. While I do have a therapy background and I do have some experience in, counseling work as well as trauma, that is not my area of expertise. I am a coach, and to me, coaching is about, focuses more on transformation. So it's almost like, I see it as the second step of therapy. So you're able to function out in the world, even if you still suffer from a mental illness, you're more functioning, right? You're able to, go about your day-to-day, in okay way, right? So for me, coaching is about transformation. It's about, self-help in a sense. You just want to be a better you. There's also healing to be done. I focus a lot with my clients on addressing cultural expectations. So whether that culture be here in America, in the United States, or culturally at home, in a Latino household, how we're socialized is how I see culture. So we work a lot with socialization and healing from that, and, kind of separating ourselves from that and being the damas that we were born to be. Coaching is also a sense of guidance. So it's basically I'm just guiding you, sending you in the right direction. And the right direction isn't what I say. The right direction is where you want to go. So you as the client tell me where you want to go. And if I see that you're veering off track, I kind of redirect you. I think of it as, maybe a parent trying to teach a kid how to walk or ride a bike. And they're kind of going in the wrong direction and they're going to fall. So you kind of turn them around a little bit, right? And so that's how I see the coaching client relationship. I also see me as like the big sister or the tia or, the bestie that you turn to, but that also has the expertise in that area, right? So you're more than welcome to go talk to your moms and your tias and your best friends and your older sister, primas, quien sea, about sex and advice, but they're only going to give you advice based on their own personal experiences and what they believe to be, quote unquote, correct or the right thing to do. On the other hand, a coach, like myself, is going to approach your situation from a non biased perspective. I'm going to come in and just give you the facts and give you the space to decide what you want to do, because there really is no right decision. The right decision is the one that you make. And I, as a coach, am here to help you deal with the consequences of either decision that you make. So, with that being said, I want to explore why someone even sees a coach to begin with. So, there are a million types of coaches in the world. I just happen to focus on sex because that is my passion. So, there's several reasons why someone would come and see a sex coach. And one of them is that their sex life, isn't what they want it to be. So, they're like, hey, something's missing. Let me get some help. So I'm in the session, I'm not telling you like, hey, put your leg here and your tongue here and, whatever. I'm not giving you positions and hacks to have a better sex life. It's really about introspection and finding out what it is that you want and where you are now and how you can go from where you are now to where you want to be. So another reason why someone would come see a sex coach is because they want to enhance their sex life. So like, my sex life is great, but I want to grow. I want to keep growing, and there's always something new to discover. So let me go see a sex coach for more options, right? I think of it as like you always going to the same vacation spot every time. Like, yeah, that's great, but like, you always go to, I don't know, let's say Miami, right? Like, why don't you try going to like the Bahamas or something instead, right? So it's about trying new things and enhancing your sex life. And I also want to clarify that enhancing your sex life doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change up what's happening right now. It might just be an addition to something or just like a little tweak, right? And even if you're not physically doing something different, if you're doing something different mentally, it can totally change the way that you have sex. So the third reason why someone would come and see a sex coach is guidance. They want to grow. I already kind of, talked about this, but growing in the sense of like, I think of it as like self-help, right? You go to the self-help section of like Barnes and Noble or whatever, right? You get these books, you want to grow as a person. Like, we're always creating goals. And so it's like about growing. We make goals because we want to grow as people. And so that's the same way that I see the growing in the coaching industry. They also want access to a professional on the topic. So like I mentioned before, you can go to your tia or your bestie or, prima, whatever, but they're likely not a professional on the topic. I've had extensive education in both, mental health as well as counseling and sex. So I know quite a bit. And, I, not to toot my own horn, but but, beep, beep, right? Like I am very confident in what I know. And I'm also humble enough to say when I don't know something, and I will definitely look for that answer for you. But it's so important to get information from a professional. And this is on any topic, not just sex, right? There's thousands of people on the internet. Well, more than thousands, there's like millions on the internet. There's tons of resources that you can look at about like sex and money and anything, right? That you don't know about, like the health industry, anything. And the thing is that you don't know who to trust sometimes. It can be really hard. And the thing is that we're like, okay, well, we don't trust the person on the internet, so we're going to go talk to our friend. But where did your friend get their information from? So it's really important to check your sources. Another reason a person would go and see a coach is because they want an outside, unbiased perspective. So, like I said earlier, you go to your friends and your family members, and they're going to tell you what they think you should do based on their own perspective. I am more than happy to tell you about my experiences and my life, but that is not going to help you necessarily. My job as a coach is to look at your situation and say, hey, these are the facts, and this is what's going on, and then help you decide what it is that you want to do and coach you around that. I help you. I don't tell you what to do as a coach. I pull the answers out of you because you already know them. You just don't recognize that you know them. And so my job as a coach is to just pull those answers out of you as you're talking. Because oftentimes the client will say the answer to the question that they're looking for, right? They're looking for a question to be answered, and they're talking to me about the issue or the problem, and they say what they want to do within that sentence, but they don't notice it because they're in it, right? They're in the tornado or whatever you want to call it, right? And so my job is to clean that up, to pull all those thoughts out that you're having about it and say, hey, this is what you're telling me. Another reason, and this kind of goes with the last point, is that coaches help recognize blind spots. So there are blind spots that you don't see. A lot of times we have thoughts that they're like opposite of each other. So we say one thing, but we're actually doing something else. So for example, we say, you know what, like I want to have more sex, but then you're never initiating sex. Well, how does that work? Right? And maybe you're not even noticing that. Sometimes you do, but there are a lot of examples like that where you're not recognizing these things. So those are just a few of the reasons why someone would see a coach. There are several more, but I think you get the point. So now I want to talk about what happens in a coaching session. So in my coaching sessions, I answer your questions. Any question that you have. It can be about me. It can be about, something that's going on right now in your life. It can be a question maybe you have about sex in general, right? Or maybe like genitalia or something like that. I answer those questions to the best of my ability. And if in the session I don't know the exact answer, or I only know a little bit of information about that, I will send you resources so that you can, get the answers that you need. I've referred people to pelvic floor therapists. I've referred people to therapists when they were seeking an actual therapist and not a coach. I have tons of colleagues that are also in this industry that I'm more than happy to send you their way. I have people that do like energy healing and things like that. And so I'm able to answer all your questions as well as refer you out if it's not a good fit and it's not what you're looking for. I also give you correct information. And this is more so in regards to sex education. So a lot of people come to me telling me that they have a problem, but it's really not a problem because it's supposed to be happening. Like, hey, I have like this discharge and, it happens all the time. And it's like, well, you're supposed to have discharge. That is a normal thing for your body to be doing. And if it's normal discharge, then that's not a problem. So what else would you like to talk about? So I often correct the information that you've been given from maybe parents or from school or, the internet, whatever. So I help you, start from a blank slate and give you the correct information that you never got. I also help you get down to the root of the problem. Why are you having these problems to begin with? Why are these even problems for you? Going back to, the unbiased, outside perspective of your life that you just don't have as a person that's in this life, right? You're living this life. I'm able to help you get down to the root of why these things are happening. I think a lot of times we try to, pinpoint why things are happening, but it's really a lot deeper than that. And so my job as your coach is to really get down to the why. And then, so in my 45-minute sessions that I offer, we dive into your current reality and we get to the root of your issues. And then you leave the call with an understanding of why this is happening that you can address the why once you leave the session. So you have, an idea of why this is happening, and then you can go on your own and address the why. And if you decide that that isn't enough, and you decide that you need a little more guidance and you want the tools that I use to change my life, and most people do, then you can sign up for my one-on-one coaching program. And I guide you at 16 weeks. We meet one-on-one every week, and I really guide you. And I give you all the tools that I have. So not only do you have access to, my expertise in the field, you also have, my support, my guidance. Once a week for 16 weeks, you have access to me. And you also are able to get video recordings and audio recordings of the session, so you can go back and have lifetime access to those. I'm starting to put these sessions on a Google Drive, so you'll have access to the drive, and it'll be a lifetime that you can go back for years to come. So that's what happens in a session. And then I just want to clarify that I personally don't just coach on sex. I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know what? Like, that's not my biggest focus right now. Maybe I'll come back to that later. Yes, I am a sex coach. Sex is my niche and my passion. But I'm more than just a sex coach. I coach on life, because sex affects your entire life and vice versa. Anything that's happening outside of the bedroom is more than likely impacting your sex life right now. When you address one thing, even if it's not sex, their other areas will improve too. For example, if you're focusing on your confidence, right, in general, it's going to improve how you show up to have sex, not only with yourself, but with your partner. If you're focusing on pleasure, which is essentially my career as a whole, right, to bring pleasure to women, if you're focusing on being able to increase your pleasure, that is going to improve your sex life, and it's also going to improve your outside life, because when you allow yourself, when you give yourself permission to receive pleasure, your whole life turns around. So that's all I have on coaching for today. If you're still a little hesitant about coaching with some random stranger, head to my Instagram page at Sex and Spanglish. Go to the highlights, and there are testimonials there where you can see testimonials from people that have worked with me, male and female perspectives. And if you have any further questions about what it is that I do or what I offer, do not hesitate to reach out. Just message me at Sex and Spanglish on Instagram. And now on to la cochinada del día. So today's cochinada del día is that talking to your kids about sex will encourage them to have it. This is completely false. And it's a super common misconception, right? I hear it all the time, at least. I don't know about you. And I understand kind of the logic behind it. Like it seems at face value that it makes sense, right? Like if I tell my kid about this, like this great thing, they're going to want to do it. The thing is that you're not telling your kid like, oh, this feels amazing, and, like all the things that you're thinking, right? Like by you telling them about sex, you're not necessarily telling them your experiences. And not to say that you shouldn't tell them your experiences or shouldn't tell them that it is pleasurable. But when you tell them about it, they don't have like the million thoughts that you have about sex. it doesn't come across like that, right? Like, they're not going to have your entire lived experience of your sex life when you tell them about sex. That's not how that works. They don't know anything about it, ideally. And so that's why you're telling them about it. If someone came up to me and I knew nothing about sex and they said, hey, so there's this thing, and, if we're just talking about like cisgendered heterosexual couples for a second, so a guy puts his penis inside your vagina, and then, he just kind of moves it in and out and around. And then what happens at the end is that like your vagina starts to like contract and it feels pretty good. And then his penis starts to contract, and then like this thing called semen comes out, and then you're done. That does not sound exciting at all. And I'm pretty sure that that's not how you're explaining it to your kids. But just think about it for a second. No, that makes no sense. It does not sound appetizing at all, regardless of how you put it. So that's one point. My second point is that we have no problem like partying in front of our kids, drinking in front of our kids, right? And I'm not saying that this is good or bad that you do this, right? Do what you want to do. I don't care. But we don't assume because we're partying in front of them that our kids, that are like 5 to 10 years old or whatever, are going to want to start partying and drinking too. We don't think that. So why is it okay for us to do other things in front of our kids that we don't want to encourage them to do? Because I imagine a majority of you do not want your kids that are like, under 18, I guess, partying and drinking and smoking and, doing all the other, like, and cussing maybe, right? We do all those things in front of our kids and we see no problem with it. And again, I'm not saying it's a problem or not that you do this in front of your children. But what I'm trying to do is show you the difference in the thinking here. Like, oh, if I tell my kid about this thing, then they're going to want to do it. But you're literally showing them how much of a good time you're having by partying and drinking and, cussing and smoking, like whatever it is that you're doing, right? You're doing this in front of them. And they see like you're having a good time, right? You have a smile on your face. And we see no problem with that. Like that line of thinking makes no sense. So do what you want in front of your children, right? That's entirely up to you, right? But think about that. Like you do these things in front of your children and then are like, oh, do what I say, not as I do. Why wouldn't you want to tell your children about sex, about their own bodies, right? It's not even about sex. It's about them knowing their bodies and the best way to protect it, because you as a parent are unfortunately not always going to be there to protect them. So I'm going to go ahead and actually stop right there because I want to do a whole episode on this and potentially bring on an expert that works with children, because this is one of my biggest pain points with my clients and just in general, is people not talking to their children about sex. So I'm going to end here and go ahead and move on to Ask a Future Doctora. On today's segment of Ask a Future Doctora, why do you know so much about sex? I love this question, and I decided to answer it today or on today's episode because of the topic of today. So this episode is more about me and about what I do, my work. So why do I know so much about sex? Well, first of all, I've always been interested in sex, and not as in like, being like a horny person, right? Which, yes, I am. However, that is not what I'm talking about. What I mean is I've always been interested in sex and the different components and things about it. So I guess I should tell you a little bit about my story, and I'm going to save a little bit or actually most of my story because I want to do a whole episode on this. But when I started going to college, My bachelor's was in psychology. So, of course, I had to take a human sexualities class. And I already, was interested in sex. I would always read up about it. And I was always into reading erotica and things like that. And so I was just a very, I guess, like a very sexual person in that way about like learning about sex. And if you've been on my social media, you've seen like the Fetish Fridays, and I'm super interested in learning about different fetishes and different ways that people have sex and the history of sex. Um, yeah, so I took a human sexualities class when I was, earning my bachelor's. I actually took two human sexualities class. I had to take two different ones. And so I learned, a lot of information there from, my outside learning. And then once I graduated, I started with my bachelor's, I started a master's program. So I'm currently in that right now. I will finish in December of 2021 with a master's of social work and a master's in human sexualities education. So I'm taking like master's levels classes on sex and sexuality and like all the ins and outs of it. When I started the master's program, I also joined a sex coaching program where I learned, a lot of coaching tools. And then I also learned, I guess like extra information, right? And got more resources. And so I've just been in school for quite a bit, learning about sex. And like, this is literally like my career. This isn't something that I just do for fun. I mean, I love my business. I love my clients. I love the people that follow me and just, want to soak up all the information that I have. I love La Comunidad Latina and, aiding them in finding their sexuality and empowering them to find their pleasure and own their pleasure. So I just educated myself a lot, and I have been getting a lot of questions about how you can become a sex coach or a sex therapist. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out and I can connect you to the right people. So that's all I have for today's episode. If this episode helped you in any way, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And as always, compártelo con una prima, una vecina, y una cochina. If you'd like a question answered on the podcast, send me an email at sexandspanglish@gmail.com. And if you like what you heard today and are interested in getting a personalized pleasure plan, head to the show notes to get access to my calendar. As a Latino certified sex coach, I help you navigate your culture and your sexuality sin vergüenza. You won't find this anywhere else. Join me every week to hear me talk about orgasms, STIs, birth control, and all the other cochinadas your abuela didn't tell you about. Until then, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Sex and Spanglish for weekly topics and updates. And if you want chisme before anyone else and early access to freebies, be sure to sign up for my email list. Simply head to my linktree located in the bio on my Instagram and click on Email Me the Chisme. Instagram is where you'll find me discussing sex and my other passions, food, social justice, y Latinidad. It's also where you can access my Facebook and TikTok accounts. Make sure to follow me and leave me a comment on my social media platforms to let me know you heard this. Espero verlas pronto!